Hello and welcome to Trialogue again. It's good to be with you. My name is Ruth White and I'll be your host for this evening. So I'm going to invite our three fabulous panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Abby, please.
Hi there, I'm Abby. I'm 23 and I'm currently living in Manchester. I work as a children's speech and language therapist, so I work with children who have difficulty communicating, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you. Stuart.
Hi, I'm Stuart. I'm not about to tell you what age I am. I am currently the minister of St Ninian's Church in Stonehouse, which is a local ecumenical partnership between the United Reformed Church and the Church of Scotland. And I've been doing that for 3.5 years. And before that, I was the SIDO for Scotland.
Excellent, thank you. And Lawrence.
Hi, I'm Lawrence. I'm a little bit older than 23. And I'm a mission and discipleship consultant, and I work on a pay what you can basis, which means I'm trying to help and encourage churches to engage in mission and to be more faithful followers of Jesus. If you hear an accent, it's because I was born in Zimbabwe, and I grew up there. And besides doing this kind of thing, the things that really excite me, I'm an evangelist for all things Apple. And my Holy Trinity B team are Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen and Bruce Springsteen.
I think that might go down in Trialogue history as the best introduction that someone's given.
I'll quit while I'm ahead then.
And a quick plug for a certain product. So thank you, the three of you, for being here this evening. We really do appreciate it. And we know that you've all brought so much that you can offer to this conversation. So 3 panelists, 3 potential opinions and 1 topic. We're going to enjoy a short time together and we'll be exploring and learning with and from each other. And we do hope that those of you watching will be encouraged and challenged by this conversation, whether you're joining us live tonight or watching later. We may have some special watchers tonight from down in Hythe and up in Yorkshire, so we encourage them to say hello if they are watching. Let's pray together before we start. Father God, thank you that we live in a connected world. Help us to be open to each other as we explore what it means to be your disciples in every area of our lives. Help us to be the people you want us to be in the places that you've put us in, and help us to do the things that you have for us to do. Amen.
Amen.
So just a reminder to those of you who are watching, this is your discussion programme. We have a passage that we'll come on to, and we have our own opinions and things to share. But what we really want to do is to serve you and to wrestle with the comments and questions that you may have. So please use Slido. It's all on the bottom of the screen now for you. Follow that link to Slido, put your comments in. Don't wait till the last minute, just send them in as soon as you're ready and we will address them and we will use them. So tonight we're going to be, as our launch pad, we'll be using Matthew 28. And so I'm just going to recap that for us briefly. So written by Matthew, one of Jesus' disciples, and it's the last chapter of the book of Matthew. And it's the bit where we see that Jesus has been raised from the dead. So the 2 Marys have gone to the tomb and there's an earthquake and they see an angel stood in front of them. It says glowing brightly in my Bible. The angel tells them that Jesus has risen and then tells them to go and tell. They have to tell the other disciples and they tell them that Jesus will meet them in Galilee. Meanwhile, the guards have gone into town and told the chief priests what's happened. And basically they're paid off. And they have to tell everyone that the disciples have stolen the body. And that tale spreads quickly. The chapter ends with what is often called the Great Commission. Jesus has met with his friends in Galilee on a mountainside. And he says to them, I'll read it so I don't get it wrong. Go then to all peoples everywhere and make them my disciples. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. And I will be with you always to the end of the age. Yorkshire are saying hello. So hello to those watching in Yorkshire. Thank you for being here. Okay, so we sent 3 questions to our panelists just to get us going with our conversation. So do send your questions in. The first question I'm going to put to Lawrence first is, what are the most important parts of that passage that might teach us about being a digital disciple?
Okay, thanks. I'm actually going to answer the second question, which was, what's the most challenging thing? As digital disciples, we can't climb mountains and go and listen to Jesus, which is a bugger on both counts. But anyway, what are the most important things we've got to learn from this passage? It seems to me that I just want to get rid of digital for a moment, because digital is the way that we do discipleship at the moment. We can't do it any other way. But the issue is doing discipleship. And that's as difficult and challenging and as wonderful and vital as anything else. And it's a central thing. This is the culmination of Matthew's gospel. And Matthew's gospel is a story of what Jesus came to do. And the last thing that he does is to say to the people who are going to carry on his mission, the church, make disciples. And everything seems to kind of hinge on that, because the most difficult thing about being disciples and about reading this passage is actually the church. It's what we've done with Jesus, with his story, with his mission, with discipleship, and we've built it into something that has got nothing to do with what's usually going on, what's actually going on in this passage. Let me tell you what I mean. I don't know about you, but I was brought up that discipleship was all about being a Christian, which meant going to church and meant believing a certain set of stuff. This is what Christians believe. And it might also stray into having a certain sort of spirituality. So it would be about how we pray and read the Bible and how involved we are in certain things. But it's all kind of churchy. Whereas Jesus, what Jesus means by discipleship is that as Jesus's disciples, as the church, we're the body of Christ. And that's not some kind of X-Files music, spiritual theological truth. It means we are the continuing presence of Jesus in the world, and that's what we were supposed to do and be. So to be a Christian, to be a disciple, is to be somebody who's recognizably like Jesus. And if churches were those kind of places, then churches would not be on the bottom of everybody's list of favorite people in the world and institutions that need to continue. Yeah. So I think that's the first thing is about discipleship. Secondly, this chapter, once you start there, if I may go on just for a couple of minutes, right? This chapter has been read and preached as really churchy. You get all the music and then the Great Commission, and Jesus says, all authority on earth has been given to me, and everyone's supposed to go, ooh, Jesus is the right way, it's the right religion, Christianity is it, and this is, you've got to go out and make everybody Christians, and it's got nothing to do with that either. When Jesus says all authority has been given to me, he's making a radical political statement. He's saying, the Roman emperor claims to be the Son of God. Well, actually, I am the Son of God. The Roman Empire claims to have all authority. No, it's God's authority, and that's been given to me. And he's doing it as an act of resistance and a revolution, and he's calling us to be that kind of community, a community of resistance. And so when Jesus is saying, come and be my disciples, he's saying, come and be an alternative to empire and all the stuff that kills and destroys, and actually instead be part of a community that's a living sign of what the kingdom of God's all about.
Thank you. Abby, I'm going to come to you next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, go for it. That'd be great.
It's what was the most important parts of that passage for you that might be able to speak to us about being a digital disciple?
So when I was reading over Matthew 28, the main bit that stuck out for me was the phrase of go and make disciples. And those two key words of go and make, that it's an active thing. Actually, just like Lawrence was sharing, it's not just about us being in our churches or having that label of being a Christian. It's about going and making a difference in our world. And for me, with my relationship with Jesus, I know that going to make a difference in the world looks like loving the poor and the vulnerable in my community. It looks like befriending people that others might not do, and actually in making disciples, I think it's not just about adding people to our church community, it's about multiplying. So you might have heard the phrase of disciples making disciples. The idea is, as followers of Jesus, as disciples of him, we want to bring other people into that family of God. We want to mentor them, we want to show them how to read their Bible, how to know God better, and as part of that they will then go on to make more disciples themselves. And that's what really excites me, the idea of being a digital disciple, that I can go onto platforms, whether that's using my social media, whether that's helping out with my online church service or running some sort of project for other people to join in with online, that I get to go and kind of influence them in some way to make decisions that favour those in need, that actually lift up the lowly, that do the things that Jesus taught about. And I think that's really exciting, actually, that in that digital space, we can bring some light in a place that can sometimes be a bit dark. We can be voices that speak some truth as well. And that's what excites me in that passage, that we go and make disciples. It's a really active thing, and we're invited into that. Whoever you are, if you know and love Jesus and you've given your life to him, you are invited to go and make disciples as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Abby. So what I'm hearing there is about intentionality. We do it intentionally wherever we are, including online. Stuart, same question.
Yeah, I'm going to say something different. The thing that always gets me in this passage is that it jumps really quickly from the women being at the tomb and all that happens there, and instructions to go and tell the men that they go to Galilee. So the women have a whole load of power in this story, which gets completely ignored by the church for the next 2,000 years, which is really disappointing, and I'm glad that we're starting to rediscover some of that. But the thing that really sticks with me at the end, when Jesus is talking about going making disciples, is that it appears to the disciples and some of them still doubt. And for me, that's a really powerful statement at the end, that it would be so easy to say, and they were all filled with awe and they would bow down and worship Jesus and everything was fabulous. But it doesn't say that. It says, of those 11, some of them, so more than one, still wasn't sure. So given everything that's happened and this encounter with the risen Jesus on a mountaintop, some of them still aren't sure. They have questions. And even though they have questions, they take that seriously and they go and try to do what Jesus has asked them to do. And for me, discipleship's all about those questions. It's all about the questions that we all have, because it's a really difficult story. It's full of really, did that happen the way that, what's that trying to tell us? And Jesus tells these weird parables that we don't really understand half the time, and we're not quite sure what they're about, and they could be about 400 different things, and we like one right answer, so that really bothers us. And living with that doubt, those questions, doesn't mean that we don't believe, because that's not what it tells us about the disciples. The disciples all go and do amazing things. They go to places and they make more disciples. They work hard at it, and they learn more, and they argue and they fall out and they make up, and all of that's about discipleship. And the digital space is just yet another place to be able to do that. It gives us opportunities to have conversations like this, where we can throw around some of those ideas and those questions without feeling that we have to have the right answer all the time, which I think is a fabulous opportunity. And I think that's what Matthew's gospel in particular calls us to do, to wrestle with those questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stuart, because that's really quite encouraging, especially to our young people who are watching and listening and joining in. Because mine definitely says, even though some of them doubted, Jesus drew near and said to them. Isn't it interesting that I didn't say that in the summary? I'm now wondering why subconsciously I left that out. So we've had a question come in, which I'm going to use now, if that's okay, because it fits in well with the second question that I sent. So the second question was about what are the most challenging or difficult parts of this for Christians to apply. And that possibly fits in with the first viewer question, which is, can we actually be church online? I guess some of the thinking there is, if part of church is about being together and fellowship, are there things that can't be achieved online, I guess, is what that viewer might be asking. So I'm going to come to Stuart first, then Abby, then Lawrence, so you know the order. Stuart.
Yeah, I hope we can be church online. If we can't, then I've been wasting my time for the last 6 months. So I think I'm going to say yes. But yeah, of course, there are things that we can't do. We can't, physicality is part of being church. That one of the things that happens in this passage is that the women go a place and they look for a person. They go to the tomb and they look for the body of Jesus. It's a very physical thing to do. But interestingly, that's not what they find. So they go looking for a physical experience and they end up having a spiritual experience. And I think sometimes we rush to the physical and forget that comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes and places and contexts, that we encounter God all over the place. And so, the first thing we should do is realise, I think, exactly what Lawrence was saying, that church isn't the only place that we can meet God, that God, is everywhere all the time. And part of our problem is that we forget that, and we don't look for God everywhere all the time. And so, yeah, some of the physical stuff I think is challenging. We've had celebrated communion a few times online, and people have been really surprised that they've felt connected to each other in a way that they just didn't think they would. They really struggled to get their head around, how can I be sitting in my house with my bread and my wine, but at the same time feel connected to other people. And I think that in some ways is a failing of the church's teaching, because every time we celebrate communion, we say something like, we join together with the great cloud of witnesses, or the communion of saints, or everyone who has ever been, everyone who is, and everyone who will ever be. And yet we haven't understood that, because that, if that leads to problems celebrating communion online because, we're not in the same place as each other, we haven't been listening, we haven't been paying attention. And so, yeah, absolutely, we can be church online. It might be different, it might feel a bit different, but it's absolutely church, because we meet to worship God, and that's, and try and learn about God, and try and follow Jesus and be a bit more like Jesus and work out what that looks like. So for me, that's church, and absolutely we can do that online.
Thank you. Just to remind the viewers to keep sending your questions in. We do have a few coming in. That's really good. And feel free to write who you are, if you would like to, just your name or where you're from, and we can always say hello to you as well. So Abby, your thoughts?
Yeah, church online. I think for some churches, it's been a big wake-up call to have a go at new things, to actually think about how can we creatively worship God together, to get to know one another, to love one another in this time. In my church, things like having food together are normally a big part of our culture, and we've not really been able to do that in the same way, but we've been able to do fun things like, I don't know, Zoom quizzes and Zoom cooking lessons and that kind of fellowship together, and still having fun, still sharing life together, even if that's been virtual. Within my church, we actually found that we had a number of people on the fringes who hadn't normally accessed our small groups midweek. And so we started up a new midweek group online, a whole group of people that were not getting that kind of discipleship and time together, but because of lockdown and us going online, they then got part of a group, which I thought was amazing. And I was also having a little look online about some stats of people accessing church and praying during lockdown. And it was a study done by Tear Fund, who are an amazing Christian charity. And here were some of the stats that I found. They said that 24% of adults had watched or listened to a service during lockdown, and 1 in 20 of those people had never been to church before, which I just thought was incredible. So it is possible, it's different, and we've got to accept those difficulties and maybe kind of mourn a little bit of things that are lost. But there's so much that is amazing about it, and we can still be church together online.
Thank you. Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with Stuart and Abby about online church is real. I mean, apart from anything else, we talk about online being virtual reality, and we need to hold those both together. So virtual isn't the same as being physically together, but it is absolutely real. And that experience of being church is what we found during lockdown as being real. I've been part of a Zoom church that meets every week, and the sense of things like, Stuart, you were saying about taking communion, and people have been saying, do you know, that was the most meaningful experience I've ever had, taking communion, and a fellowship together. Quite silly things like we all sit and we can look at each other as we are doing now, rather than looking at the backs of the heads of somebody, and, you know, when the sermon gets boring, counting how many flakes of dandruff they've got on their collars. Yeah, actually, people are there, and we're exposed to each other, and we can see each other. What about the fact that you know, there's something about the digital space, isn't it? That people talk about stuff that really matters, deep stuff, intimate stuff, and they talk about it a lot more quickly than they ever would in real life. So, you know, I've gone to churches where people in their 70s have been in church together, and they never have heard each other's faith stories, and yet being online and being asked to go into a room and say, you know, what are the things that you're finding difficult to hold on to with your faith in the midst of life? That's been real over the period. And again, something that Stuart pointed up, we talk about church as transcending time and space. And, you know, going to church week after week, you're very aware of the reality of what's happening locally, church-wise. For us, and by us, I mean, you know, the congregation of which I've been a part as a Zoom congregation. And incidentally, we decided that we would carry that on, come what may, precisely because of this experience of it being a real church. So we've been aware. We've met with URC people from across the UK, and other non-Christian people like Methodists and Anglicans and all these other strange people. You know, we've discovered, hey, we're all Christians together. And we've had people from different countries. We've had people who've not come from a church background. We've had people who've said, I left church long ago. It really does nothing for me, or I really struggle with it. But this is something that I can identify with. This is church, and it works for me. And the last bit was to pick up something Abby said earlier, which was about, you know, the priority of the poor and so on in Jesus's ministry. It's the stories that we tell online. Online is a great place to share stories, and not only amongst ourselves, but as an act of proclamation and Christian witness. You know, the kind of discussions you have about you have about the government policies and everything else, and all those discussions about BAME people who are particularly vulnerable to coronavirus. And what about the fact that there's this direct correlation between poverty and illness and access to resources? So yeah, all church stuff, real church.
You're starting to touch there, Lawrence, on one of the questions that have come in, which is, are there some things that actually we can only really do online? What are there some things to celebrate that being online so much in lockdown has given the church that wasn't there before? I'll read the actual question because I'm waffling it there. So if there are some things we can't do online, are there also some things that we can do online that we can't do face to face, or things that are better online? So I think Lawrence has already touched on those, but would anybody like to speak to that?
We have Sunday school on Zoom.
I love Sunday school on Zoom.
Sunday school on Zoom's been fabulous, and one of the things that has been fabulous about it is that we've not been doing live services. So I have 2 dogs who are very noisy, and so a Zoom service for us just isn't going to work, because they're going to bark in the middle of it, and that's going to annoy me, and I'll have to mute and all that kind of stuff. So so we took the decision, or I took the decision very early on, that we weren't going to do live services. So the services are recorded at some point during the week whenever I get round to doing it, usually a Saturday, because I don't often get round to doing it. And but on Sunday at 11 o'clock, we still have Sunday school. So we have Sunday school on Zoom, and it's been fabulous because for the families involved, it's become a lot more like a kind of messy church experience. It's a family church experience, whereas Sunday school, we took the kids away from church and we took them through, and we did fabulous activities with them that I could never get involved in because they were happening at the same time as the service. But now I can go to Sunday school every single week, and all of the families are involved together in a way that they just hadn't been previously, because we separated everybody out. And it's just been brilliant, and more people have come more of the time, which has been great. And partly that's because nobody had a choice; they didn't have anywhere else to go, which is, you know, long may that continue. But no, it's just been fabulous to see parents engaging with the story and with the conversation and all of that kind of stuff that just wouldn't have happened before. So for me, that's been fabulous.
Yeah, a lot of churches are echoing that, aren't they? They're saying that actually one of the things that's come out of this time has been that families are now worshipping together as a family. And the church have had a role in enabling that, where you could argue that potentially we've had a role in disenabling that historically. So it is worth celebrating. Because
there's I suppose the argument that our services go on Facebook and YouTube, so I could watch that on my phone by myself.
Yes.
But actually what we're finding is people are watching it together much more, you know, so that people who maybe come to church on their own, that their families are looking over their shoulder and say, oh, what is that? Oh, that's what you go to on a Sunday. What can I see? And can I join in? And it's just been brilliant. You know, it's a way in. You know, it's so difficult, I think, for people to walk through the door of a church on Sunday morning, whereas to, you know, click on a video, watch 10 minutes of it, decide whether or not you like it. That's easy. You know, you're very anonymous. You know, you don't have to come back. You don't have to speak. You don't, you know, all the things that people feel really scared of when they walk into a church that they've never been in before. You can do all of that online, and it's I think it's just fabulous.
Brilliant. Abby or Lawrence, I don't want to not give you the opportunity. This was about what can we do online.
You go first.
So I was thinking about, in my church, we've been running an Alpha course, and Alpha is just about kind of exploring faith, particularly for people who are maybe quite new to understanding Christianity, who Jesus is, and those big questions. And we've always ran an Alpha course in person, but we've found that actually by doing it online, we've got so many more people attending, and even that function of going into breakout rooms, still having amazing, deep conversations, and people coming to faith still online. You know, they're sat in a totally different part of the city to us. And I think actually, yeah, the accessibility, whether that's people have got kids or they work shift patterns and they can't come to church at the set time. And we found as well just that people are attending far more online, and we're hoping that actually even when it fully goes back to person, there'll still be an online version. So I quite regularly preach at my church, and we've decided we're going to pre-record the preachers so that there's always that option for someone to watch online. So I think there's lots of things that we can learn from it that will be great. Yeah.
Don't lose them as we move forward. That's going to be the key, isn't it? Let's not go back to normal, whatever that was. Yeah. Lawrence, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I'm fast reaching the point where I wonder what on earth are we going back for? Let me be honest. You know, are we going to say that it is a great experience to go to church and sit 2 meters apart, and we sit there with a mask across our face and we can't sing anything, and we listen to somebody cranking something out on the organ, and you know, there are no words or whatever, and we can't have coffee together afterwards, and we've got to sit and wave to each other and muffled, and everyone's going, sorry, I can't hear you. I mean, you know, what for? You think how much money that is costing, and how much just to be able to say we're back in church, whereas actually, you know, our experience of Zoom church, here are some of the things that I've just loved. Number one, we play music videos, so we sing, you know, we sing stuff from Stuart Townend to Matt Redman and all the stuff that I never sing, and our church never sings, plus all the traditional hymns. But we'll also have cultural stuff. So, you know, you can have something, a song, a pop song, or a Bob Dylan song, or something that connects with the music. I mean, we even had, and I was doing that. We even had Bob the Builder as a theme song once, and you should have seen the beatific expressions that come across people's faces. Bob the Builder. Scary, but they liked it. And what about the fact that actually, you know, one of the things that we did was we connected with Jack Jackaman and his 12-year-old daughter, and Jack is a woodcarver in Bethlehem. So in the middle of the service, we're talking to somebody from Bethlehem, and Joyce, who's 12, is talking to 10, 11, 12-year-olds here in the UK directly. And they're beginning to share stories together. Absolutely unrepeatable and wonderful. And you get the chance to do that, and you get the chance to hear all sorts of people. I like the fact that sermons online are like 10 to 15 minutes rather than 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the fact that we ring the changes. I like the fact that that at the end of a sermon, or at some point in the service, everybody goes into breakout rooms to talk about stuff. Yeah. We never do that.
Never do it.
We can't do it. So, yeah.
Let's not lose this stuff. Stuart, just to say, somebody messaged in to say they really appreciated your Sunday school story, and that they think more ministers should join in with Sunday schools. I think I would echo that one. A question here for you. How can we, they're picking up on the bit where Jesus says, go and make disciples. And the question is, so how can we make people disciples? Surely it's their choice.
Yeah, and teach them to obey all that I've commanded. It's pretty direct language, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and even the people that had spent 3 years with Jesus weren't sure. Yeah, I think partly it's how we read those words, isn't it? Go and make disciples, as though that's something that you can, you know, we have a part, I guess, in forming people's understanding. You know, my job is to try and help people to understand this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and to provide opportunities for them to have conversations about it. So that's making, you know, it's making space for those conversations to happen, which I think we really undervalue. Lawrence is right. Those opportunities to just talk to each other. And Abby's experience of Alpha, that's what Alpha is. It's an opportunity to talk to each other, which then transforms our understanding of something, which changes us into different people.
Yeah, that's
the process. I think we come to a new understanding of something because we've had a conversation, and we so need to create more opportunities for people to just join in those conversations. I love having conversations with people that say, I don't believe in a God that does this, and this, and being able to say, neither do I.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant place to start a conversation from, because all they're doing is bringing all their, these are all the things that other people have told me about God, and I don't believe any of that. Well, that's a great place to start a conversation rather than to end one. Why do you think that? Where did that come from? Who told you that?
A disciple isn't a finished thing, is it?
No.
We're never made, and I've made it, I'm now a disciple, where it's a continuous thing. So I guess that you play with that with the word made.
We keep reading, so thankfully we've got some more of the story, and we see that all the way through Acts, Peter finds out more and more and more and more. It's not a set thing. He doesn't, go off and take this pre-packaged thing to people. He discovers as he goes that things are going to have to change. This has implications for how I understand the world and how we're going to talk to people, and whether or not we let Paul go off in this crazy mission around the Mediterranean to talk to people who aren't like us. And
disciples are made. It's not about forcing people to be disciples. It's about creating disciples. When you make disciples, and Jesus didn't choose 12 people and say, guys, get your pens and papers, come and sit under this olive tree, and we're going to spend the next week, and you're going to take your really extensive notes of everything that I say, and then you're going to pass it on and teach everybody, and they've got to learn all the words. I mean, that's not what Jesus was doing. He says, come and live with me for 3 years, and actually walk the way of the cross with me. And then you will, and that process of growing and being formed is how we make disciples. And in the same way, churches, as communities of disciples, they're made. It doesn't, none of this stuff happens naturally, because it's all about the kingdom versus empire. It's not about heaven. It's about a different way of living on earth. And there's all the kind of forces that are pushing in on us. Some of them are kind of deeply difficult. Some of them are thoroughly evil, and some of them are it's just a normal way of doing stuff that isn't about the kingdom. And so it's actually something really creative and important that's going on here, I think.
Abby, we've had a question that I think you probably should take the lead on, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I'll read it verbatim. So it says, quite a lot of discussion has been about families and units with children or partners. What about young people who are single? Some we know are not engaging in streamed worship and prefer blog or TED Talk style approaches, which they can listen to whilst doing other things. So what about young people, especially those who are on their own potentially?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because I've definitely found in my generation, in sort of the 20-somethings, we love a podcast, but we love to do it whilst we're doing something else. So you're doing the washing up and you're listening, or I'm listening to a sermon and I'm going for a run. And it's actually, they've hit the nail on the head there, that my generation isn't necessarily that great at sitting down, listening to something for 45 minutes, an hour, without being able to do something else. And actually, that's probably linking in quite nicely with our theme around digital world, digital life, in that we're used to things now. We don't have that kind of being able to wait and have delayed gratification. We want something right now. So I think some young people will struggle to engage where they have to sit down and listen to a Zoom for a period of time, but maybe just got to get creative of how you're going to reach out to those young people. Is it that you can kind of watch together somehow, whether that is in person and doing it safely. Is it that you could also be on, I don't know, Skype or something in the background and kind of watch it together through different screens? Could you say, hey, afterwards, let's have a phone call, or let's go for a walk and let's talk about the sermon today, or what's God been speaking to you about recently? So I think there's ways around it. Those people that are maybe living on their own, or kind of are quite isolated in that way, we just got to be creative in how we reach out to them, and I think we've learned how to do that over lockdown. We've gotten used to not being physically together, so maybe just chatting with them as well, saying, how can I help you engage better with church? You know, do you want some one-on-one time? Like, I'd love to do that. Let's read a book together, or listen to a podcast series and talk about it. And just also recognising that the kind of the shift in culture of how we do church and interact with church is looking a little bit different for the young adults coming through at the moment.
That's brilliant. And it's probably worth saying then that the Trialogue team have literally been told that by young people just recently, and we are exploring two things. The first thing we're exploring is we would really love to encourage young people to gather together to engage with Trialogue and send in their comments and questions while it's live, to make the most of that opportunity. But also we are exploring putting it out afterwards as a blog, so that, you know, while you're making your tea, you can listen to the 45-minute chat that we had on a passage. So yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. One of the things I think that digital gives us a real opportunity to, church in the past has been a one-time only live event, which is fine. You know, we like one-time only live events. We pay lots of money to go to them. You know, Lawrence has paid thousands of pounds to go and see Bob Dylan over the years, and, you know, and loved every minute of it. You know, and that there's something really special about that. You know, that those one-time kind of events. But at the moment, our service is 20 minutes long. It's on YouTube, Facebook, our website. It's on 7 different podcast apps, I think, because it's really easy to do.
Yeah.
You know, all I have to do is to record the service, and then my wonderful Apple product will spit out a video version of that and an audio version of that, and I can upload those really easily to different places, or to one for the podcast thing, and then it distributes it across Spotify, Google, Apple, you know, all the kind of places that people will go to listen to things. So actually for me, it's really simple. It takes half an hour. It's the easiest part of actually putting it all together, to make it available in lots of different ways, which we just never did before.
No. It was very exclusive, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to apologise. I should have said podcast, not blog. I'm being corrected by my tech team there. I don't know this stuff. Lawrence, did you want to comment?
It's a comment really about the complexity, the increasing complexity of the world that we live in, and all the great stuff that digital gives us. It also widens certain kinds of gaps as well, and one of the gaps, you know, between the millennials and the older folks, you know, the people who grow up digitally in the way that we never did. You know, I mean, I'm of the generation that was pre-computers, I think, and certainly pre-internet. You know. And that's just another world, and it's a real challenge to take an institution, church, which is both institution and tradition, and both of those are important. How do we do tradition rather than when it's not just doing it the same way and maybe changing the language and making it a bit more modern? You know, that's what happened to church. Between the kind of church of the 1950s and then the church of the 70s. We changed the language and we brought guitars into worship and everything else, and thought this was incredibly cool and hip and progressive and everything. But actually, when, you know, what Abby was saying about people who can sit in a service and add up the hymn numbers and be doing their emails and finding out what the cricket score is and everything else, and concentrate on all of those things at the same time, you know, That's another world for those of us who still have control of church, as it were, and what church is.
There's just I'm just reading, sorry. I'm proving that I'm not one of those people that can do two things at once. Okay, so there's been a question here about, does the fact that people can be anonymous and just watch online worship, has that caused an increase, do you think, to the already growing trend of consumer Christian come and take culture? I would be saying, is there a problem with that at some point?
Probably.
Because people just came and took from Jesus all the time and never expected much back from them.
Yeah, and how is that different? I had this conversation with someone the other day, that how can I tell the difference between someone who comes and watches the service online and they've watched it? You know, I have no indication of the quality of that for them, but then I don't have that on a Sunday morning either. You know, people come, they sit, they go away again, and mostly we don't talk much about what happened. They might comment at the door, but they might not. Most people don't. So actually the two things are very similar.
Yeah.
It just seems as though more people are doing the online watching. So,
and we're watching in more than one place often as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
We can have that buffet of church.
I don't care. I don't care whether people are just watching or they got their video on or they say something or they don't, because I don't think it's an issue about how people are behaving and responding in church. I think the issue for the church is what is the stuff that we're giving people and offering people, and the stuff that stops people being just consumers of worship is the stuff that calls on people to make the costly decisions and the transformations, the kind of stuff that, priorities that are not, they don't sit easily with us. They're not our interests. My interests are not the interests of the poorest people.
No.
And if I prosecute them, I'm prosecuting against my own interests, and that's exactly what Jesus calls us to do. And it's incredibly difficult. Now, if somebody's just consuming consumer religion, they're going to move on because that's not going to be what they want. Yeah.
I want to start to bring things to a close, but with the final question really, and it's going back to what you were saying very early on, Abby. You were giving examples of what we can do as disciples of Jesus digitally, how we can do that in our lives. So I think that'd be a good place to finish, really, to make it more about the individuals. So I'm going to come to Abby first, if that's okay. I know this isn't what I agreed at the beginning. I'm going to come to Abby first, then Lawrence, then Stuart.
Yeah, so I'll just share a few examples of things that I've gotten up to or I've seen friends doing in terms of sharing faith online. So during lockdown, I decided that I wanted to do something a bit more meaningful with my time. I'd just finished university, was waiting to start a job. And so I decided that I'd set up an Instagram account that was going to help to raise money for tier funds, and basically got artists to donate artwork, and then people bought the artwork and we raised over £1,500 for the charity. And through that I was also then able to talk about God's heart for the poor and that narrative of justice throughout the Bible. And so I was able to use something that was maybe seen as a bit of a secular, it was just an art sale on Instagram, but it was then an opportunity to speak to kind of hundreds of people about like God's heart. So that's something I got up to in lockdown. I've also been quite involved with my church in terms of online services. And what I've loved about that is that there's that shareability factor that's almost bit easier than asking someone, do you want to come to a service? Because I often found when I invited friends to a Sunday, they'd be like, oh no, I'm busy, and there was an easy get out for them. Whereas I can share on the link on Facebook, I can send it in a message to a friend, and they might actually tune in. And I've found that if I've said, oh, you know, I'm hosting something or I'm doing a little talk, they'll come along because they kind of want to support me as a friend. So I've loved that shareability side of being able to add a little link or say, hey, my church is doing this fun event, why don't you come along? It's just on Facebook, kind of normally know you're there, but you're really welcome to come. And I think also the final point I'd like to make is just how we kind of use our voice on social media platforms, particularly as young people. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all sorts of platforms all of the time. And actually just to think a little bit about the content we put out, not to put pressure on ourselves like, oh, I've got to write a blog and I need to record a video and, you know, I need to have all these skills and I need to be talking about Jesus constantly. I'm not saying that. Just thinking about the things that you post, the language you use. You know, you can do quick checks. Is this going to be, am I being an ambassador for Jesus when I post this thing? When I like that thing, is that actually aligning with what I believe and how I want to live? And I'm quite passionate about that in terms of young people and having like a healthy relationship with social media and thinking about what you're viewing and who you're following, because the people that you're reading about, seeing pictures, will influence you whether you realize it or not. So for me personally, sometimes I just have to have a little check-in. Is this actually healthy for me and my relationship with Jesus? Do I maybe need to not follow that account or cut down on my screen time? So using social media and digital to be a disciple, to be active, to go and do stuff, but also sometimes to retreat from the digital side and to just be present and to think about what's going on in my life, just in the real physical world as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Abby. Stuart and Lawrence, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I loved what Abby was saying, and in terms of asking ourselves, is this good for my relationship with Jesus? As I was saying in our discussion before we actually went live, I think everybody needs to go and watch the documentary of the social dilemma, because that's really important. And I also wanted to pick up on the fact that, you know, Abby, you were saying something about you really enjoy your digital church and everything else. I want to say that the thing that I found with our church is that I'm proud to invite people to it. It's not naff. And you know, there's often times in church is a bit naff and you think, okay, I can get away with going every Sunday, but I really wouldn't want to invite other people, but we are. So it's about using this time and this digital space really to engage with the questions of the day. And the big questions of the day are not about the future of the church and why you know, why we're going down the toilet and how we're going to get enough people and enough money and enough whatever to keep going for the next 5 or 10 years. That's not what this is about. It's about asking, what are the questions that are really bothering people? You know, where's God in the pandemic? And what the pandemic's shown, and it's pushed us all online into this global conversation space for the first time. We've never, as a human race, been in this place where we are now. It's an extraordinary opportunity and privilege. You know, we've realized that so much of stuff is broken. Our relationship with the planet, our relationship with the economy, well, capitalism, you know, it's not the only game in town, and it's a bastard, and it kills you, and it kills the poorest people first, and it's always the same people who are the victims. You know, these are the kinds of things that we've got to be saying in the digital space, and saying as disciples of Jesus. This is not just my political opinion. This is not just, you know, I'm saying this because of Jesus. And that leads me on to telling the story of Jesus. Do you realize Jesus was killed because of the kind of world that he was fighting to bring about into being? And it's an extraordinary privilege and opportunity that we've got. But we need to be really critically aware of our lives and the way that the world works. We need to get our heads around some stuff. Politics and economics, psychology, the structures of poverty, the structures of oppression, victimization, and all those kinds of things, you know, and difference, issues of difference. We need, this is the time and the space to have these conversations. I don't think we're going to be in a place to do that again in the same way. And it also means being really, as it were, biblically literate, not Bible experts, but deeply immersed in the stories of Jesus as fans of EastEnders are immersed in the stories of EastEnders.
Yeah, thank you. Stuart, final word with you?
Yeah, what they said.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that awareness of, I've spent the last couple of days saying to people, do you realise what you've just posted?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that that's either what you believe, or if it is, we really have to have a serious conversation about that. Because they've either just reposted something or they've said something in a way that doesn't really represent who they are. And it's so easy to do. How often have we typed a text or an email to somebody and there's no context and there's no intonation, apart from capital letters for shouting at somebody, then, that's it, and people will read words in different ways, which is one of the fascinating things about the Bible, that you can give 3 different people the same passage and say, what's that about? And they'll come up with completely different things. And you could ask them again tomorrow and they'll come up with another 3 different things, because tomorrow's a different day and we've learned from the first experience, and that changes us. And this digital space gives us the opportunity to be transformed, but also to transform the people around us, while at the same time being aware that the platforms that we use are loaded. They're right. Facebook sends you things that you want to see.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of that the posts that come up and the adverts that come up are things that want to reinforce who we already are and the biases and the prejudices that we've already displayed. So we need to be really, really careful about who we follow, and why don't we follow people who disagree with us?
Yeah.
Because we'll only ever hear people who do agree with us, who'll make us think that we're right all the time. And that's a really dangerous place for anybody to be, I think. So we have that opportunity to hear all of those different voices rather than to shut them out. We can do both. We can cut them off, or we can invite them in, and we can have a much wider and richer conversation. I love the idea that Jesus called a tax collector and a zealot to be his disciples. And I love the idea of him making them sit together at dinner every day to say, you come from completely different places, completely different. Work it out.
Yeah.
Work it. How do you be a disciple, and how do you be a disciple, and how do you work that out together? That's the opportunity that the digital gives us, I think.
And I think what we've said tonight is we need to intentionally make the most of the opportunity that is being given to us. Thank you so much, guys. We could go on for ages, but we are time bound, unfortunately. I need to say that next week, not next week, we're fortnightly now. So in 2 weeks' time, Phil Ray will be hosting, and he will be exploring how do we engage the disengaged. Now, these themes are not chosen by the SIDO team. These themes are given to us by young people. So if you have ideas for topics that you would like explored, please do send those in. You can use Slido to do that too. His panelists will include Victoria Paulding and Andy Littlejohn, 2 names from Fury of Days Gone By there. Excellent, that's going to be good. Tune in for that one. Okay, so I just need to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for giving your time, your experience, and sharing your stories. And a special thank you goes to our friends from Yorkshire who joined us tonight as our 4th panelists. Hello, thank you very much for doing that. And we hope this has been useful to you. We hope you've been challenged and inspired, and, to use Abby's words, excited again by living the life of Jesus today. So I'm going to ask Stuart to pray for us as we finish together.
Let's pray. God, we just want to give you the thanks for allowing us to come together like this, for giving us the opportunity to connect with one another in time and space. We are in different places across the country, even across the world, or even catching up on a Wednesday evening, and yet we can still be together. And we're joined together by your word and by your son Jesus, who wants us all to follow him and to live the way that he asks us to live, to explore and to doubt and to question and to find out new things about ourselves and each other and about you. So thanks for the opportunity to come together, to learn new things and to follow you. Amen.
Thank you, everybody here, and thank you for watching. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.